Welcome to the Rex Andrews Show. Glad to have you here today. For those who have found us for the first time, welcome aboard. We'd love to have you in the conversation. And for those returning, I want to thank you because over the last 6 weeks, the podcast has now reached into the top 10% of fastest growing podcasts in the United States. Now, we do have listeners all over the world, but thank you for our US listeners that push us up and over the charts. That's pretty exciting when you consider there's over 1 million podcasters. Taking care of a little bit of housekeeping, don't forget to subscribe, regardless of the platform you're on. The podcast is distributed on 23 different platforms, so wherever you get your podcast, we should be there. And of course, you can always get it on the website at therexandrewsshow.com. There's no it's rexandrewsshow.com. Fantastic. I have a great guest for us today. And that's Allie Olson, and she has some amazing things to share with us today. There are incredible things going on in the vacation industry and specifically timeshares. And I think you're going to find our conversations very, very valuable today as our listeners, because I'm always, we always see this whole thing about the timeshares and what's going on in that thing. And you always get invited to them and you feel like it's a big press thing and all that kinds of stuff. And then you hear horror stories. And so I was really excited when Allie accepted the offer to come on the show today. So welcome, Allie. How are you this morning?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me.
Glad to have you. All right. So, I always like to get the backstory, get the story about the human side of this. And so I always tell my listeners, life is like crossing a stream. You hop from one rock to the next rock and you try to get across that stream. So take us back. Where did this all start? Where'd you grow up? What was your family? I mean, how did Allie become the Allie you are today?
Yes, not everyone grows up dreaming of, well, probably not anyone grows up dreaming of being a timeshare guru. So that wasn't the original plan, of course. I'm from Sedona, Arizona. My family has a bed and breakfast there. So I grew up in the hospitality industry, helping, make quiche and clean cabins and all of that kind of stuff. And then became a residential appraiser. And kind of just as I looked around Sedona, there wasn't a ton of industry. The market was, crashing obviously in 2008, and the appraisal world changed so much. Not that it wasn't busy, but it's preferred not to show up as someone from the bank.
Oh, wow.
So that changed things so much. So I was looking for a career switch. I already had a real estate license, and that was kind of the booming industry of Sedona. Being such a destination spot was timeshare. That was really the best opportunity in town. So I went and checked it out and really found it very fascinating, the whole process, the sales process. And in those days, it was the transition between everyone owning traditional weeks and moving into points programs. So,
wow. Okay. So we'll unpack quite a bit of that. So did you have siblings growing up? Were you the only family slave who got to clean the bed and breakfast?
So I'm the oldest of 4. So everyone got their fair share and opportunity. Although I think my dad would say, that he spent a fair amount of years just keeping track of where I was, and it ended up that it was best for me to spend my free time working at the bed and breakfast.
Yeah, fantastic. So you actually grew up there in Sedona?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. My family's been there since the 50s.
Wow. So, when I lived down in the Phoenix metropolitan area down in Tempe, we went up to Sedona a few times, and it's a gorgeous place. And I'm sure, it's probably changed a ton since you grew up there, right?
It has. One wonderful thing about Sedona is it's kind of like living on an island because you're surrounded by national forest. So the expansion can only go so far. But you do have just such an increase in tourism the last 3-4 years. So, with about 60,000 visitors a day and 10,000 residents, it's become a bit imbalanced, which was part of, why I relocated to, the Phoenix area. It was just, it's become a nice place to visit, a beautiful place to hike and do things, but the day-to-day of that kind of traffic in a small town can be pretty wearing.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. I always loved going up there. So tell us, getting your feet wet in the timeshare industry, what did you start off doing? Of course, we won't name companies, but what did you start off doing? Were you in sales? Were you
I was in sales.
Okay.
I was in sales, and it was so fascinating. I remember when I began thinking, I wonder when I'm going to get a good tour. Where's the good tour? And the back in those days, you were an independent contractor, and they would say, okay, well, you're going to get 20 tours. If you sell 2 out of 20, you have a job. If you don't, then you're out of here.
Right.
I thought by about tour 15, I still hadn't gotten a sale. And I thought, my gosh, what's going on here? Why am I not getting a good one? And I was like 22 years old and, not knowing a ton about really anything. And so finally, I reached the 20th tour. I don't have a sale. I'm called in the office and told, you're done. And there were about 10 of us that they called in all together and said, you guys, best wishes. This isn't a fit for you. And, everyone got up and walked out. And I knew that they were having more tours than agents every day. There would be tours left over sitting, and they would call it overflow. So I kind of just waited and let everyone leave the room and said, listen, you're in overflow every day. How about I just wait downstairs and then I can take the overflow tours and I'll get better. I'll get it. So the boss kind of laughed and said, don't come back upstairs unless you have a book in your hand.
Wow.
So that was sort of the first experience of realizing, maybe I had a little more gusto than most or something, kind of the first time of fighting for something. And so on my way down the stairs comes this gal who's, she's the most amazing salesperson in the world, kind of a person, everyone looked up to her in the industry. And she came by and said, what's wrong? I had a couple tears and said, what's wrong? And I said, they almost fired me. And she said, okay, come with me. And so I went on tour with her, and it was such an eye-opening experience. This was the first time I realized that you can, change someone's mind if you follow a process that exists. And so we went on tour, and it was so funny because I'll never forget, this little lady named Marilyn came on the presentation who owned weeks of timeshare. And she said, Marilyn, why do you think that everyone switches to points? And Marilyn says, oh, well, I don't know. She says, yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. Why do you think it is? And Marilyn goes, well, maybe it's for flexibility. She goes, flexibility? You think anyone would spend tens of thousands of dollars for flexibility? No, that's not it. Okay, well, maybe it's for weekends. No, that's not it. By the time that 10 minutes had passed, Marilyn's going, well, if it's not for more locations and flexibility and better value and being able to do a few days at a time and, all of this stuff, what is it for? I'm going to help you. So I was kind of, really just a light bulb moment for me of, oh, okay. So when someone, tells themselves what they want, and what the benefits are, when you can, create that in a conversation, you're going to have, such a different outcome. And it launched into a career of really enjoying understanding a sales process and all of that. And now where I am today, on the flip side of that, understanding the process that, my clients were walked through to purchase something they probably never wanted.
Okay, so it sounded like when you first started off, there really wasn't much sales training. There was no handling objections or anything like that. It was just throw you to the wind.
Here's a pen and a pad of paper and go for it.
Wow. Yeah, my whole career has been in sales and marketing in high tech, and so, gosh, to be thrown to the wolves with no training, that's crazy. No wonder they were going through so many people.
Yes.
So help us understand what the timeshare companies put people through. What is their strategy? How do they twist arms, kind of thing.
Right.
I'm pretty sure it's pretty well known across their industry on their inside what they have to do to get somebody to sign a contract.
Yes. So it's remarkable the amount of training that exists today for that same career. That's what makes it so funny that when I began, it was, here's a piece of paper, here you go, girl, go talk to these people. The investment in the tours is about $500 for most companies. So it is taken very seriously, and there's intensive psychological training and sales training. And it's a very scientific process that clients are walked through. And it's what's turned me off of the industry. It gets a little, it's just not a good feeling when you recognize that it's a numbers game and the same presentation given over and over has a result of 20 to 30% success.
Right.
Well, it's very manipulative of a sales process, and unfortunately doesn't always cater to what the clients are truly wanting, and trying to just recognize, oh, this motivates that person, this is what they're afraid of, connecting the dots. So in general, most companies are following about a 10 to 12 step sales process.
Okay.
It's easy to recognize once you know what it is, and it'll generally begin with, meeting the clients, getting the wall down, building credibility, doing a discovery where you are gathering information to present your case, essentially. Looking for, what's going to motivate this person, what are they afraid of, who would they be spending the time with, where are they spending money, how am I going to build an economics?
Right.
Then you would launch into, building value, small product presentation, and then all of your closing along the way and tie downs. And it really is very much a process. No one's winging it anymore. They wouldn't have a job. There is an expectation to follow the steps, and it does work.
So we'll come back to this work. I just had another question. You mentioned when we first started the conversation that back then you were an independent contractor. Is that how the salespeople are today? Are they independent contractors?
No, really everyone is an employee these days. Yes,
okay.
Absolutely an employee. And it's just changed so much. It really was, when I started, I had the feeling, even though there was a sales process and you learn, closing techniques and things, I still had the feeling, oh, my clients are going to go and spend the best memories. They're going to go and use this product for the best memories of their life with the people they love. And it was a happy feeling. And that has really digressed over the years.
Okay. Success rates, you just mentioned that a moment ago. What kind of success rates, boy, if I could talk today, does a timeshare owner look for when they're marching their minions of people through the door?
So, if the process is followed to a T, if you have a very consistent salesperson in the top of the industry, 20 to 30% closing rate is doable.
Okay.
You're not going to have a job selling less than 10%. If it's less than 10%, you'll be out of a job.
Right.
And that can vary greatly also on the type of tour. So, it's studied. These companies put so much emphasis into understanding all of their different types of clientele walking in the door, who's the best match for that person. They're calculating the numbers daily on the sales. And most of those locations are doing, in many cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars a day in business.
Wow. I didn't realize that. Now, are most timeshares in networks, so they're sharing properties across a large set of properties, or, is there some that are just their own? I mean, help us understand the industry a little bit more about that, because I can remember back in the day, family members would go to these things and they'd get sold these really big pie in the sky things, and it never quite turned out like they said it was.
Right. Well, and I think that some of that can be just a lack of education for the salespeople. At least when I started, there was no training, so to speak. You really didn't know what it was. And the answer was always, who cares? If you're talking about product, you're not going to get a sale.
Okay.
There isn't a ton of knowledge there. The industry, originally, timeshare began as you'd buy a week interval at one property. At that time, in the 70s, especially when timeshare really took off, most families did return to the same location year after year for their vacations. That was very typical in the travel industry. So you'd buy, your week in your unit that you want to stay in and go there each year for the same time. As people began exploring more places, becoming, a little more diverse in where they wanted to go, then there became these big exchange networks where you could take your week, plug it in. It was worth, there would be charts of, okay, your week's worth this. You could trade for anything of equal or less value.
Okay.
Straightforward. It was easy to see. Okay, mine is a red week. I can trade for any other red week.
Right.
You'd put in your request, and it was, most of my clients now, with getting them out of timeshares, most of my clients now remember fondly those days.
Okay.
And they to get great trades. It worked for us awesome. We had all the kids. We went to the condo at this big place. It was amazing. So that's kind of where timeshare got its foothold, was on really having a pretty straightforward system that worked well, if they used it, right? And most people were using it back then. So fast forward, to where we have these sort of big companies get into the game, introducing points programs. So that really it just changed the inventory situation so much, because you have these big companies come in with a lot of funding, billion-dollar companies, and buying up resorts that have gone into distress, because in the last 10 years the industry changed, and it would have anyway. Travelers have so many options now. The internet gave them the whole, the world's everyone's oyster now, and you can book for tonight to go anywhere, and we're all familiar with doing that. And
sure,
so it just changed so much. People aren't planners like they used to be. Then, we have Airbnb, VRBO that have come, into play, and they've allowed everyone to have access to condo-like accommodations all over the world without needing to own timeshare to do that.
Right.
So, it's really undermined the whole industry, and really owning timeshare and trading it has become more expensive than just booking something wherever you want.
Sure.
Flexibility. So, it's just become obsolescent, as so many things have. So it's not really timeshare's fault. It's just the times have changed. The product became obsolescent.
That's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that prior conversations before getting on air. The Airbnb types of the world, that's probably really changed the dynamic, because you really can. I can remember last trip out to Disneyland and stuff. We got a house over in Anaheim, and the entire house, and we had all kinds of people there and stuff. And it was remarkably affordable. And, we were in and out of there in 2 days, and nobody cared and had no commitments otherwise. So I'm sure that has really made things probably very difficult for people. And then the other point that I always make is I'm a person that likes to go to different places all the time. So I'm not somebody that wants to go back to the same place. Hence the reason I've never really wanted a cabin somewhere, because there's too many corners of the world to see, and there's too many beaches and too many mountains and whatever. And so I would not have been the best timeshare guy, because I really am sort of ADD as a traveler. I want to go all over the place. So, wow, I never really thought about that. So yeah, I'm sure. What type of shift has Airbnb caused to the timeshare industry?
Interestingly, timeshare still is just cranking. I mean, in 2019, there was over $10 billion in timeshare sales in the United States, which is more than the music industry. So, it's a huge, huge moneymaker. Still very active. You have your big players involved, companies like Marriott and Hilton and Hyatt and Westin, all these, hotel brands have even moved into it. And, it continues to sell and sell well, because really the joke is, no one ever wanted it, right? They never wanted it. You pay the client to come in to talk to you, and then through a sales process, they end up purchasing. And it doesn't mean that they're weak. It means that, it's the saying is an unorganized offense or defense against a, organized offense. So if someone's on vacation, their guard is down, they're enjoying themselves, they're making memories with the people they love, of course they're going to be more susceptible to a process that gives them, is pitching, giving them more of that.
Yeah. Now, is the industry, this may be as dated as I am for exposure to it, are they still doing things like, we'll give you free tickets to Disneyland or free night stay? I mean, are they still buying the attention that way?
Yes.
Okay.
3 days, little mini vacations, gifts, people yanked off the street, for the Jeep tour or something like that. Yes, that's still the format for marketing, and it works. The activities in a lot of travel places have gotten so expensive. I mean, I was surprised a few years ago to hear a helicopter ride was like $500 for 12 minutes or something. So
wow.
People are, they have deals with these tour companies and things. And that's still the way that people are marketed in. And so, the sales haven't slowed down. What has changed dramatically is the satisfaction level of owners.
Okay.
So having the Airbnb options out there, and just the internet in general, all of these travel mega sites where you can book anything, and, the shift culturally to people, being, what was the phrase that you used? What kind of traveler are you?
ADD. I'm just
an ADD traveler. I love that. We're all ADD travelers now. We want to go here and there and have this big list, and we can do it easily. And so, especially pre-COVID, right? And we look forward to when that returns. So the traveler satisfaction level, the timeshare owner's satisfaction level has really changed dramatically. They often bought it thinking they're going to give this to the kids. It'll be a good investment. Their kids will enjoy it. Their kids are going, I don't want that. I'm going to, I just booked 2 nights for tomorrow, drop of a hat where I want to be.
Well, and a point you made that's really important, and I think not everybody understands, because of the internet, the world's at your hands. And it's just as easy to go to Bora Bora as it is to go to San Diego. I mean, it really, the internet has leveled that. And then also too, I'm old enough to remember, I'm 55. I remember back in the days when we had travel agents, and that's where you went to pick up your paper tickets. And today kids have it on their phone, and they're like, well, what's wrong with you when I tell stories about that? Why would you have a paper ticket? So it really has leveled the playing field. It's changed. The internet has changed the entire industry. So what are the timeshares attempting to do or doing to try to address the problem of the satisfaction, with satisfaction levels going down?
And it varies company by company. You have a lot of different brands in the industry. Most of the big brands, I think, are actually doing a great job to adjust and shift and try to offer value. There's a lot of money behind it, a lot of smart people, and good researchers, right? So they're coming out with products that are term products where you don't have to own it forever. Okay. That's very popular. The idea of, okay, I like to travel to condos. I want the brand to be consistent. There are a lot of, these days we see, the more options we have, the more brand loyalty emerges because it's nice to have consistency. And a lot of travelers want to go to their Hilton all the time, or the Marriott, or, there's brand loyalty that does exist. So, and I don't know if you've ever stayed in a timeshare, but, the whole thing is, instead of a hotel room, you have a kitchen and a living room and space, 2,000 square feet or something like that. So if you want to have resort setting and, those kind of amenities, and then timeshare can be a great option. So term products is something that has emerged in the last 5 years, big time. That's going well. Diversity in what you can use the points for. There are really virtually no major companies that are still selling deeded weeks.
Okay.
Everyone has shifted to a travel currency, which can be used for everything from shopping to cruises to tours to, so they have changed the product offerings immensely over the last 5 years. And I think they've done a pretty good job of mixing that up. The issue in the industry is more so with, you have about 6,000 timeshare resorts, and about 3,000 of them are not part of a large network. They are not on a points program. It's still a deeded week that grandma owns, and she pays that maintenance fee whether or not she uses it. Those individual resorts don't have sales centers any longer. It's just HOA managed typically.
Okay.
Meaning that, the owners vote for a board that decides, are we replacing the ping pong paddles this year?
Right.
There's not a lot of opportunity to diversify the offerings, and they're kind of stuck. And these are called legacy properties.
Okay. Well, I can imagine, not knowing that much, but if I'm a big player like Marriott or Hilton, I have enough properties that I can keep a portfolio that the winner properties make up for the dogs or the losers, so the ones that aren't as well. So, but I still have that large portfolio presence. I can deliver a consistent brand. I mean, because when I used to travel, there were years I used to do over 100 flights a year in my tech career. And, I'd stay in one hotel chain, and I go into a major metropolitan area and I would stay there, and I happened to be a Marriott guy. So it gave me lots of choices. And so I can see how that side of the business is probably doing well and possibly even thriving. But now that you talked about the fact that about 50% of them are not in those big networks, that seems like that could be a recipe for disaster. So let's talk about that.
Yes, and it has been a recipe for disaster, mainly, both for the resorts and for the consumer, the timeshare owners, definitely. So why is it bad for resorts? Well, people stop paying their maintenance fees, they will, so there's you see people not paying. Now the maintenance is going up for everybody else. You have deferred maintenance around the property if the funds aren't there to take care of things. And so the resorts are getting run down, and they don't have, in most cases, the ability to rent the empty units, the dogs, as you would say,
Yeah.
So they're not jumping. They don't have these big accounts on Travelocity and stuff to fill all that inventory.
Right.
So the resorts are suffering, and they face, bankruptcy in some cases and things. And there's a lot of repurposing going on in the world with these properties. That's really starting to come up. It's happened big time in Europe and in Australia and New Zealand with timeshare properties where they've been turned into apartment complexes, luxury condos, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
That movement is beginning in the U.S. now. So now for the timeshare owners, how is it impacting them in a negative way? They're having, to pay whether or not they use it.
Right.
They are not having great flexibility, and they don't have a lot of options. And so it's created a disaster in the sense that so many scams have emerged. And, it's really a bad situation. I am meeting people constantly that have, lost $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. Paid a company to get them out of their timeshare, never heard of it again. When you have a huge need that exists and no regulation, that creates a perfect storm for fraud. That's what we're seeing in the timeshare exit industry, big time.
So when you talk about fraud, let's dial into that a little bit. What types of fraud is taking place? I mean, what is happening that the consumer is getting, gouged or, taken advantage? What are we seeing in general?
So really, with the different timeshare exit companies out there, one of two things happens in general. One, they have good intentions, but they don't know what they're doing.
Okay.
So, they go on a road show or something, they're going around and they're getting business, or they're advertising online and radio ads, that kind of stuff. And they have clients call in, they take their money, $5,000-6,000, we'll get you out. And then the reality of actually executing that transaction is a lot more difficult than I think a lot of people realize when they enter this industry. This is a real estate transaction. It's a two-part transaction to get someone out of a timeshare.
Okay.
You have to transfer the title, which means securing a legitimate buyer, not some fake LLC that never pays the maintenance, right? You have to really find someone who's going to take this on.
Right.
And we'll talk about that and what we've done to address that.
Okay.
You have to find the new buyer, but then you also have to and transfer title. That part's easy. And that's where most companies go. They do a title transfer at a county level. They think they're done. Well, no. In almost all of these resort CC&Rs, you have to actually get approval of a transfer confirmation from the resort level. And that's where the title comes in. So they might get the new deed. The client a year later is like, wait a second, I just got my maintenance fee bill again. We don't own this thing anymore. The deed, they go to their resort. They say, hey, here's the recorded deed. I'm not the owner anymore. And the resort says, oh, no, we don't honor transfers to LLCs. Or, oh, no, we didn't approve this transfer. You haven't gone through our transfer process. We weren't paid our transfer fee. Oftentimes, we have $1,000 transfer fee that this company who the client paid to take it over, they're long gone, many times out of business.
So the companies that are, the guys that are doing the fraud type stuff does it require a real estate license to do these transactions, or are these just freewheeling guys just out there making a buck?
A lot of them are kind of the approach that they want to go, fast and furious with it.
Okay.
They're often gone before any licensing would come into question or anything like that. So what happens is, you either have the ones that have good intentions and then fail to execute because they're unaware of how difficult it is to go through the transfer confirmation process with about over 1,000 companies in play.
Wow.
Small resorts, and everyone having their own specific rules, paperwork, process. There are very few people on this planet that are competent in handling these transactions. So that's case scenario one, right?
Okay.
And the benefit of the doubt to companies of, if that's what they've run into, we actually will end up in many cases being hired to assist those companies in cleaning up the backlog.
Okay. Okay.
So I do business with other exit companies at times only if they have an interest and contact us in regard to, hey, we're in trouble. We didn't know what we got ourselves into. We've got these 30 deals we did that we don't know how to get them done. And, we'll happily do that kind of business to make it right.
So when someone signs up for a timeshare and these ones that you talked to, you're locked in, I'm assuming the contract from the property owner of the resort has a lot of T's and C's in there that nobody reads, right? As far as the exit stuff,
Yes, and to the resort's credit, they have been making it very difficult. The big companies are changing their processes. They're doing things to make it difficult to get through that process.
Right.
I would personally blame them. They have been burned a lot by these companies that, have someone feeling they're getting out of the timeshare. Now the client says, well, I'm not the deeded owner anymore. I'm not going to pay. And these resorts are having to spend immense amounts of money on collections and attorneys and all this stuff to try to get the obligation paid. They have, coming from the other side of the industry, I get why they don't like the timeshare exit companies. I totally understand.
Sure.
So you have the one side of the good intention companies that just didn't know what they were doing. And then you have the fraud side, which, and really on both sides, if the consumer can end up being frauded. Right. But you have ones that are malicious about it, that have no intention of ever doing good business. And that's really the dark side of it, which thankfully the industry's been cracking down on. The big developers have been going after those companies. And that's great for those of us who are doing good business. Eliminates that competition that, can underprice you because they're not even doing the deal. So
right.
You have these people that go around, make these promises, take your money, and never do anything to get you out of it.
Wow, this sounds like I didn't realize how big of an issue it is. I'd always heard you could get into disaster, but this sounds like navigating through a minefield of opportunities with attorneys and lost money and all that good stuff. So it sounds like what you've done, and that's why I reached out to you, is that you've come up with some tactics, strategies, execution that helps people avoid this. And so let's start to go there. What makes you different? How do you help people? What in the end, what do you do?
So number one, the thing that sets my company apart, Give Up My Timeshare is my company. What sets us apart is that we are the only one that doesn't take any payment up front. We get paid at closing through the title company.
Nice.
So it functions as a typical real estate transaction. That was very intentional by me because I knew that it was going to be challenging to get the deals done. And I wanted to build that into the business model that, we had to be successful for the client to get paid. It has made us the best.
Okay.
And, because we've had to develop the process and be the best at it because we're not getting paid unless we are successful in getting the transaction done. And I'm so glad that we went that route. I mean, number one, 100% of my clients are happy, 100%. So, and we presented a lot of small communities. I'm going to a community in Tucson this Friday, and I have 8 past clients from that community that, and 3-4 of them said, yeah, I'll come by and be a live testimonial. I don't have to ever look over my shoulder because every client's happy.
Nice.
And an immense amount of referral business, and that's really growing a lot for us. Also, we are referred business from estate attorneys, accountants, things like that, people that are, savvy to the poor investment that a timeshare can be, what that can mean for an estate. And, they don't want to refer their clients to something risky. So that's what we've done to set ourselves apart is we just don't take any payment up front, no deposit, nothing. And, when it's ready to close escrow, funds go to the title company. So that's what makes us unique. How did I get started into doing this? A few years ago, I had a past timeshare client come to me who had many different ownerships. He was terminally ill. He had bought lots of times from me, loved the ownerships, traveled all over with his son, was terminally ill, and wanted to know, how can I get out of all of these? Because my son doesn't want to inherit them.
Okay.
truly thought it would be like a 30-second Google search. I said, oh, no problem. I'll refer you to someone. I thought I would just look up, how to get out of a timeshare,
Right.
company and refer him to somebody. And I really thought he was the nicest guy and stuff. And so I'm looking and I'm asking myself, would I let my parents go through this company? And I started to see, I'm very sensitive from all the years of sales training. I'm seeing the same sales process in their pitch.
Right.
I'm seeing this like high pressure thing and, that following the same steps of the sales process to get someone into a timeshare. So it's like really setting off alarm bells for me because I'm picturing that I'm going to find something that's more of like a professional service.
Okay.
And another sales pitch. So it really caught me off guard. I had no anticipation of that. And so it was like, oh my gosh, I don't feel comfortable referring him to any of these companies that are going to charge him when he has 15 timeshares he's trying to get rid of. He's going to be looking at $70,000, $80,000. I don't want that on, my shoulders that I referred him to someone if they aren't legitimate. And it's not to say that there aren't other companies that are legitimate. It's just, how do you know? How do you tell? If they're taking money up front and they say in their contract that they have up to 3 years to perform, it's like, I'm not comfortable referring anyone to that.
Right.
So that's kind of where it came from. And I thought to myself, my gosh, this is nuts. I can't believe that no one is like a straightforward professional service about it.
Yeah, no kidding.
That
So are there many companies out there like yours that don't take any fees until closing?
I'm not aware of any other timeshare exit company that takes no payment upfront.
Wow.
Anyone else that I'm aware of. And I try to constantly stay abreast of everyone out there in this, field. Everyone else takes payment upfront.
Wow. That is a differentiator then. And so if you're help the listeners understand, what are some of the big gotchas during an exit process that these less than ethical people might be running people through? What kind of questions would would a timeshare owner want to ask to make sure that they're not getting taken advantage of?
There really are three major scams
Okay.
that I see played out. First one, it's not really a scam. It's just the service doesn't work. It's pay me to market your timeshare.
Okay. So a
Generally
remarketer.
Yes, it's generally around $3,000. We'll promote it. We're going to get it on all these sites. We're the biggest reseller of timeshares, this kind of a thing.
Okay.
It's just common sense. Just like you wouldn't pay a realtor up front to sell your home, don't pay them to sell your timeshare up front. It's not like a realtor doesn't have advertising costs and things going on. They have to have a confidence in themselves that they're going to be able to sell it. And guess what? They won't take on a listing they know they can't sell.
Right.
Because they're not going to put their effort and their advertising money in their time into something that they're not going to make a commission on.
So they're not helping the people with the dogs, huh?
No, they're just charging them. And, it's not that they don't do what they say. Sure, they're going to post it on eBay and all these different sites and stuff, but there are no buyers, right? Think about it. No one buys a timeshare intentionally, really. Okay. There's not a strong resale market for a product that people have to be paid to listen to hear about in the first place.
Exactly.
I
hadn't thought about that. We're paying to get you in. And nobody does that in the housing market, that's for sure. Okay, no. So you have the remarketers. What's next?
Okay, so then you have the people that will reach out to you and say, I have a buyer.
Okay.
I know someone who owns week 9, week 11. We found you on public record. They want the same unit week 10. They're trying to put together 3 weeks there. They winter, and they're willing to pay you, $10,000 for your timeshare.
Right.
Well, any person's going to be like, yes, we're out of this thing. We're actually, getting some of our money back. Somewhere along the line in that process ends up being, we need you to deposit closing costs, transfer fees, whatever. Somewhere in there's some reason that the seller has to actually bring funds into escrow, which usually is not, or has to send some kind of money for something to happen with the transaction, at which point they never hear from the company again. The buyer falls through, now they can charge you to remarket it, this kind of thing.
Right.
So it happens a lot. And then, so really, if anyone's reaching out to you, not a good sign.
Okay.
Okay. If they're target marketing you and you haven't submitted your information to them, this is not good.
Not a good thing. Okay.
Stay away. Yeah. And then finally, you have the attorney groups. And there's a plethora of information. A Google search of timeshare exit, and then just going over to the news page,
Yep.
you'll just see tons of cases of attorney generals involved with shutting people down, attorneys being disbarred, jailed. And the whole reason is that they have told people, don't pay your maintenance fee. It's going to give me leverage to negotiate for you.
Right.
Or they're trying to convince people, hey, if we say that you were, tricked in the original purchase, then we can get you out of it. But they're coaching the client into that when in fact, true fraud in the sales process originally is, infrequent.
Okay.
Right? It's become more frequent, but in general, especially 20 years ago, no one was really pitching heat, as they call it. People weren't lying to the clients. They were, motivating them with fear, but they weren't lying to them.
Okay. So the fraud, it basically comes down to not executing on their services that they've advertised, right? I mean, is that what it ends up being? Or they get into a situation where they didn't look at all the clauses and terms and conditions, and now this timeshare exit company can't help somebody or doesn't know how.
I mean, whatever the reason is, and there are many, the client pays $5,000-$6,000, they're not out of their timeshare. So, and there's no getting that money back.
Oh, wow.
I mean, even the largest exit company, which I won't name names, you can find it doing a Google search, has had 5 attorney general complaints, and out of 60,000 some cases they were paid up front for, they were only successful in 13,000 of them.
Wow.
And this is your largest one in the industry, and a major financial advisor, big time speaker, actually endorses them. So when you really look at what's going on, if it's not built into the company's process to not get paid until it's done, you have no way of ensuring a risk-free transaction. And really the motivation to complete it isn't there as much as to get new business.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're not taking care of business, you just keep getting more, and you worry about that on the back end. There's an old saying that the best check to write the best check in the world to write is a commission check. And essentially that's what you're getting. You're getting your fees for service on completion success. Mm-hmm. And so whenever I try to negotiate a contract for anything, I want paid a higher amount on the back end than if you would have paid me on the front, because I'm going to ensure the success. So it sounds like you've taken that approach.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So how long have you been doing, you and your firm been doing this type of approach? I mean, tell us a little bit more about your company and what you do, and then also where you serve, because it sounds like you could probably help a lot of people out there.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So yes, 3 years that we've been, in really formally in business, actively doing a lot of transactions. And so our process is that, and we do have a webinar that explains the whole thing.
Okay.
So that's good. People can go to giveupmytimeshare.com, watch the webinar, and it really explains the whole process. To boil it down simple, we have a calculator. It's, figures out based on the maintenance fee and the transfer fees of that applicable company, as well as what we know our time commitment is into that particular brand. So, 2 clients, both with a $500 maintenance fee, if the transfer fee was the same at the same resort, it may not be the same price to go through us. However, 2 people that own the same thing with the same maintenance fee would always have the same price. We do not we do not negotiate. We use a calculator because pricing integrity is important to us.
Okay.
And, we go return to communities over and over again, and we don't want people talking and, oh, well, I got this deal. It just, that feels yucky. So we don't do that. So there's a price, a quote given. Then if the client wants to move forward, they would submit documents to us, ID, maintenance fee bill. We open escrow. A few weeks later, they get notarized documents to sign. Sometimes it's 6 months later. We give a correct client expectation based on the brand.
Sure.
And then typically, though, in less than 45 days, the whole thing can be completed. Then they're going to, have to do notarized signatures, send stuff back to the title company, pay, and we're done. So it's a pretty straightforward process. We serve all over the United States, Canada, Mexico, and the Caribbean. We do not work outside of that area. So a timeshare in any of those areas we can service. And really the only thing that we can't work with is a timeshare that still has a loan.
Okay.
because we're actually transferring title. So just like a home would have to not, have
Right.
on it. And interestingly, most timeshare loans are actually personal loans. So technically you could transfer the title and the membership without paying off the loan. I just think it's bad business.
Right.
To do that. I stay away from it. I don't want to be involved in that. So
just from a curiosity perspective, from my perspective, is there regions of the world where there's a lot of people, dumping timeshares up higher at a higher rate than others? Say, mountain ski resorts versus, the Mexico or something. Do you see any trends that's going on with that?
No, it's a great question though. I mean, because yes, there are trends in what's being dumped the most.
Right.
Okay? It has little to do with the location and much more to do with how has that company moved into, the modern era.
Okay.
And so if it's a mom and pop timeshare company, they've been sold out for years. There haven't been any updates. They're not on points. The client really can't trade and get the same stuff that they used to.
Right.
Not with a big brand that's been, really aggressive about, improving and getting with the times, then you're kind of stuck in this archaic thing. You can't really trade for anything. Your inventory's, your bottom of the barrel, no matter what you own. It could have been, I meet people all the time that have a traditional week in Hawaii that used to be the top of the food chain. They could trade for anything they want. And now, they can't get a summer week in Vegas. So it's really changed so much how the entire system works. So what the trend is and what people really want out of are those traditional deeded weeks.
Mm-hmm.
The client never paid to go into points and they just don't have the flexibility of the trading that they once did.
Right.
And so don't want to go to Hawaii every year now.
Right.
Or wherever it is that they own. So it's the legacy properties, those old timeshares that didn't become part of a bigger company. That's what we see a mass exodus from. And interestingly, some people have the approach of, well, I'm just not going to pay the maintenance fee anymore, which opens up a huge amount of liability, though it can be a very different experience based on who you own with. So if you own with a big brand and you stop paying your maintenance fee, they have accountants, they have attorneys, they have the resources to immediately put it in collections, come after other assets, lien other, property, whatever they want to do. So garnishments, all of that stuff is within the legal rights.
Wow. Because
it's property taxes, insurance, you have an obligation there. Just as you cannot walk into the street and declare, I don't want this home anymore.
Right.
The tax bill is still going to find you. You can't just owning a property.
There's no easy way out unless you do the rules.
No, yeah.
So I hate to ask this, but we're all dealing with this with the pandemic that we've seen across the world. How has that impacted over the last year that we've been involved with this mess?
So, I mean, it has tripled our business. More people are looking at, hey, we don't know when we can travel again. We just paid, and most people that come to me, they've been paid 3 or 4 years of maintenance fees recently and not used it.
Wow.
At all. So, they already weren't using it. Now we have a pandemic. They still have to pay the maintenance fee. A lot of people I hear a lot of complaints now about, I can't believe that they haven't been more accommodating to the owners by waiving a year of maintenance or doing some kind of deferment when people are having to pay their mortgages or their garbage. Right. There's been so much assistance and patience on payments of different things, and that hasn't been felt in the timeshare industry.
Okay.
So I'm not aware of anybody waiving the maintenance fees or postponing them or doing anything like that. Right. Sure, they'll let you save your usage over, outside of the normal deadlines or something like that for the future. But it has definitely increased the number of people evaluating. I think, the whole pandemic in general has made us all kind of look at our lives a little bit. It's changed perspective on so many things. And I think as people have gone through this, they've changed what type of travel they want to do. Drivable trips have become much bigger. Yes. National parks, more remote areas, things like that, where timeshare properties tend to be in very densely populated tourism areas. Mm-hmm. And I think there's been a shift a little bit in travel in general about, where people want to go, what they want to do. Many people have become closer with nature, and it's kind of a lot of dreams of, traveling the U.S. now. versus the international big travel?
Well, it's funny you say that. In part of my business, I was involved with a company that was working on some new electric cars, and they were tow behinds for the motorhome industry.
Okay.
And this last summer, a large percentage of the big motor coach, the bus types, Class A, big, those, they were out of inventory.
Yes.
Because people wanted to drive places. They were reluctant to stay in hotels. Mm-hmm. They wanted the freedom to go wherever they were. They wanted to be, like you said, more outdoors so they can pull over here and be in places less crowded. And so then the other contributing factor that was crazy for the motor home industry was the fact that the plants were shut down. So Winnebago and these big, huge companies that were manufacturing these, and we're talking $400,000, $500,000, $1 million units.
I know.
And they were sold out, absolutely sold out. And they couldn't make them because the factories were shut down or really restricted. And then the demand was so high. And in most of those companies like yours, it was 2 or 3x from the year before their sales and sold out by July. It was just craziness. So
yes.
Interesting. So what do you see on the horizon? I mean, gosh, if we all had the crystal ball, we wouldn't be here, right? What do you see on the horizon for your industry?
I would imagine that regulation is around the corner. I welcome it because we are in, my humble opinion, of course, and biased opinion, one of the only exit companies doing 100% good business. So I welcome it. The whole thing that had to be solved was what to do with these timeshares, right? So, in the past, the timeshare exit industry was transfer them to what are called Viking ships, these empty LLCs, never pay any maintenance fees and just let them go. And there's been enough precedence now, you can't do that. You have to have a legitimate buyer or solution for it. So we've done a huge amount of vacation rental with usually, and I tell people this at, our seminars or something, if you want to become a vacation expert, and do Airbnb and VRBO and all this stuff to rent your 1 week a year, power to you, you can do it. You might make 10% above your maintenance fee. So it's not a real moneymaker, but it's a solution for what to do with these. As we've become more and more adept at using all of these different programs and understanding, I feel confident that, I got to be up there in the top of people that really understand how to maximize each program out there, having owned them all and experienced them all. So there's a little bit of user error that can occur because there's not a lot of training on how to use the different systems. Right. So as we become better and better at maximizing them, we toy with the idea of, do we want to offer people that have gotten out through us some kind of a travel club? So, I've toyed with that idea. One thing I know for sure that's on the horizon for me personally is I'm working on a book, The Truth About Timeshare. With funny stories of, what the industry kind of was built on, just some funny stories. And then ultimately how to maximize the different programs out there. What are your options as an owner if you do want to manage it yourself with vacation? Right. I'm about educating the consumer. We get plenty of business, so I'm about educating the consumer, and then if it's a fit for them, if they like what we're up to, if it's a fit, great. And if they just want to, get advice on how to rent their timeshare or get the most out of it, then I do, talk about that as well.
Okay.
So that's what's going on. Yeah.
So a question for you that came to my mind during our conversation: is there a typical average length of ownership in this industry right now? 3 years, 5 years, 10 years?
Perpetuity.
Yeah, perpetuity.
Oh, yes. Most timeshares are deeded in perpetuity.
Okay.
Forever. And it does pass on to the other generations.
Well, I guess I didn't frame my question right. Is there a typical length of time that someone, even though they're signing a perpetuity contract, is there a typical use? Okay, I've fed up, I'm giving it 3 years, I've given it 7 years, 10 years. Is there a typical ownership length as far as how long they have it before they bail?
You mean from point of purchase from the point of sale to dissatisfaction enough to pursue an avenue out?
Yes, that's what I'm looking for.
Yes, I would say that it is probably, on a points program, if people have bought in the last 5 years, usually pretty satisfied.
Okay.
If they have owned it since, prior to about 2010, then you can pretty much assume about 80% of those people will want out.
Okay.
So maybe 10 years,
Okay.
Time to go, oh my gosh, we've spent 10, 15 grand on maintenance fees at this point, and we went on one trip, and we gave our niece that one vacation. What are we doing? We don't want to use this thing.
I know when my kids were little and in sports, and I have 5 kids, and so when my kids were little and in sports, we would always talk ourselves out of doing something like this because our summers were booked.
Yeah.
I mean, youth sports have become a year-round business. And so
Yes.
to get a vacation where you could get everybody schedules aligned was virtually impossible. So we always have to be very, very flexible and be able to pivot because you just couldn't. So I was just kind of sitting here thinking, man, how long until you forget that you decide, whoa, this just isn't for me anymore because my schedules have changed or my life has changed. Now, where I'm in the situation now where my kids are grown, I had a lot of time on my hands, right? I mean, I could go to a lot of places there, but until now, not even. And so it would be, I think there could be this awakening at any point in time of, like you said, oh, I've paid $15,000 in maintenance and I've been there once or even maybe never.
Correct.
So.
Yeah, it has so much to do with phase of life and what kind of travel someone's wanting to do. And while I meet people all the time who loved their timeshare for a certain time period, they'll go, oh, when our kids were little, or oh, when the kids first left, or there was a chapter where they enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I always start my seminar saying, hopefully you enjoyed it and got value out of it and made memories with people you love. I spent many years believing in that in this industry, and I still think that there's a lot of happy owners. And I meet people all the time where they'll pay us to get out of a couple of them and keep one that they like, the more flexible program or something. So it's not that it's all bad. It's that anything with that kind of a permanence, when we all know certainly that life has no permanence, right? No. There's always a shifting and a flow and things are changing and it's all about phases. And when you have something that is rigid and doesn't, reformat with your lifestyle, then there, eventually is dissatisfaction with it.
Agreed. Well, Allie, this has been a very, very educational podcast here today. This time has been wonderful, and I'm sure we're just touching the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
Can you give our listeners your website again? Not too fast, so they get it. Give us your website, and then tell us to make sure that anything that they need to do before they get in touch with you.
Sure. So it's giveupmytimeshare.com.
Okay.
We also have noriskexit.com. So it's either of those. Our phone number is 833-344-8387. You can also just Google my name and timeshare and you'll find a lot.
Okay, fantastic.
Many videos and been on many different news stations and things like that. So timeshare.
Myself and my team are honored to have you here today. Quality guests are always important. And so I've really enjoyed this. I've learned a ton. I didn't know about this in the industry. And again, I would also, come to the conclusion, there are a lot of good in timeshares for the right people at the right time, but you surely want to avoid the bad when you're trying to make a change and move on. So it's been very helpful. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. And I hope that for anyone out there that's looking to get out of a timeshare, just be aware, don't pay anyone up front, and just make sure you do your homework on whatever your path is to doing that.
All right. We're going to call it a wrap here for today. This is the Rex Andrews Show. You can find us anywhere that your podcasts are. Make sure you subscribe. And then you can always find us at our website at rexandrewsshow.com. So again, thanks, Allie, and we'll call it a day. And until next time, be safe and make it a great day.